Welcome to the Fit for Halter podcast. We're here to bring practical content and community to the amateur halter exhibitor. I'm your host, Amy Zabel, and I interview people from across the halter horse industry. We'll learn new techniques, hear about the hottest products, and get to know one another. If you grow in your knowledge and we gain more exhibitors in the ring, this has been a success. It's a laid-back environment. Prepare to be inspired and maybe take some notes. Welcome to the Fit for Halter podcast. I have the pleasure of introducing to you some friends of mine that I met through the very early days of my podcasting journey, Liz Keller and Jenna Tolson. So they've been an inspiration to me, not only in the quality of content that they provide and the technology, but the way that they're bringing conversations to the horse industry or to the listeners in variety, not only quality, but tackling some hard issues. So today we're going to go through a couple of things, including podcast journey for On the Rail podcast, but also some ways that we see the work that we're doing in On the Rail and Fit for Halter as a benefit to the horse industry. So I'm going to let Liz and Jenna introduce themselves and tell you about their personal journey, as well as some other areas that they're involved in. So ladies, take it over.
I suppose I'll go first. It's still new getting introduced as Liz Keller. I just recently got married a couple months ago. So a lot of you probably know me as Liz Mormon. Personal horse journey. I started this horse crazy thing when I was 10. Typical story, started in 4-H, worked all the way up through that with my youth career. And then in my early 20s, I started getting into the quarter horse showing a little bit, not too much. But by my mid 20s, it's really when I started showing on the quarter horse circuit. I had a big hunt seater that I did all the things with. He was super fun. He's out on lease right now, so I have a 2-year-old. But I've taken a break kind of from the show pen for the last couple years, so I'm excited to get back into it this coming year. As far as everything else, you guys probably have seen Millennial Cowgirl the most. Everybody loves my spooky sweaters, so I think that's probably what everyone knows the most about me. And I've done that since 2019, so it's been a hot minute, and I've had a couple other endeavors and started the podcast a couple years ago. So it's a little bit about me.
All right.
I'm Jenna Tolson, and it's fun to be on the other side of the microphone, I guess. I think it's fun. Maybe we'll see. I had parents, we lived in town, small town in Kansas, and no horse experience or whatever. And my sister and I convinced our parents to send us to riding lessons, started riding lessons, which led to buying one horse, which wasn't good for 2 girls. So we bought 2 horses, showed hunter jumper, pony club, that type of stuff. Went to open shows eventually because it's Kansas and there's just not a lot of the hunter jumper stuff around here, which the first horse we bought ended up being a paint. So that's what really got me into paints. And then I think I got my first like quote unquote Western pleasure type horse in high school. And she was my open show horse, ended up breeding her and got me, luckily, a very top level Western pleasure futurity prospect paint horse. And I was just obsessed, took lessons, learned, never really had horses in full-time training or anything. We did our stuff ourselves, but I was obsessed. I think as a lot of us, we just, are sponges for information. And I've gone and just learned, and people have helped me along the way, and showed that horse, a 2-year-old at the Riker, and did really well with her there. And from there, it just kind of kicked off. I've had a few other hunt seater paints since then. I've started going more the hunt seat route than the Western route for various reasons, and it's a lot cheaper on the clothes and tack. And had kind of a brief break from the show pen for different reasons, but hopefully getting back there next year. And in the meantime, started Ride Fit Life, which is my online based coaching, fitness, and nutrition coaching business for equestrians, which has been another passion project of mine. And then a few years back, Liz approached me off the wall, which we did not know each other. And I'm sure that's probably an interesting story about doing a podcast together, which is on the rail. And so the rest is history, I guess.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. And really, that leads us well into my first question. What motivated you to start the podcast and why?
I'm going to let Liz go with that one.
Well, so part of MC, which Millennial Cowgirl, was I love creating. Like, that's my number one thing. I just love doing random things, writing, drawing, anything like that. And so Millennial Cowgirl actually started as sort of a creative outlet for me to interview people in the industry. And it was an online thing, then a magazine, and then went back to online. And then I just started doing a bunch of artwork. But in the meantime, I still had that desire to interview people because I feel like, as we kind of spoke privately, is our industry is like hidden to the general public. And I wanted to find a podcast that was about our industry, not roping, not dressage, not jumping, like just strictly stock horse showing. And I couldn't find anything. So, you know, two passions combined is interviewing people and being creative. So I was like, a podcast sounds great to get our stories out there, interview cool people, you know, get the public a little bit of knowledge about what we do. And I knew I couldn't do it on my own because I am truly I'm truly an introvert. I can do anything online. I can send emails, I can talk all about that, but actually getting myself out there and like talking out loud was more challenging. And Jenna and I were just like friends on Facebook, but you don't know each other. And she had started this super cool Facebook group. Actually, she had two groups at the time, which is the more public one now, add more leg for like the amateurs and everything. But she also had one that was strictly talking about ways to, and Jenna, forgive me, I can't even remember the name of that group, but it was strictly talking about ways we could improve the industry and like move forward. So I was like, man, she would be a perfect co-host. And yeah, so my goal for everything was just more education for the general public, tell them what we're about, and then also just be educational for people in our industry, but also allowing people to know what we do and hopefully bring in new people. So that was my intentional goal in the beginning.
Yeah, I remember sitting out on my deck here at the house, and I think was it June or July?
Yeah, it was
something
like
that. I mean, what, 3 years ago now?
No, I think it's been 2022, June,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, and I got a message from Liz, and literally we'd never talked to each other ever before. I mean, maybe some like replied to like Instagram stories, you know, like short things, but no actual conversations. And she sends like out of the blue, I'm reading this, and I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. And to be frank, I had toyed with starting a podcast of my own because I do think there's a lot of utility for podcasting these days, and it continues to grow. But when I briefly looked into it, I was like, oh, this is way above my pay grade as far as like just setting up the websites, the RSS feeds, the technology, all of that. And I was like, I don't even speak this language. I don't know what it means. And so I kind of like lost interest. So I was like, I'm more about like creating the content, and then I don't know what else to do. So when Liz approached me about this, and I was like, you know, if you had somebody else that you guys can kind of bounce off each other, I was like, I think it could work. And I definitely thought there was a need in the space in our horse industry for a podcast like that, because there really hadn't been anything that had been like at least concrete or consistent, which is a big thing I'm sure we'll get into with podcasting. But Yeah. So when she approached me about it, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely interested. Send me some information and we'll go from there. And then I think like 3 days later, she had this like whole PDF, like nice formatted, beautiful packet of everything. Cause that's true Liz style that I'm like, okay, well, this looks, this
Here we
looks
go.
really nice. So I was like, I mean, how do you say no to that? So yeah,
Right.
and then, so in my mind, I'm thinking like, yeah, a couple of months down the road, we'll launch this, like maybe fall, start of the next year or something. And she was like, what about, I think our first episode
August 1st.
was like NSBA of that year. And I was just like, all right, here we go. Here we
Yep.
go. So we did it then. And I know one of the big things I always hated was if you have a podcast that if you claim you're going to be a weekly podcast, if you don't put weekly episodes out, that is one of my pet peeves. My two pet peeves with podcasting is not being consistent on the schedule you say you're going to put podcasts out, and then terrible sound quality. And
Yes.
so those are the two things that I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, this is what we have to. And sound quality is a little bit, it's hard when you have guests. I mean, you are at the mercy of that. But those are the two things that I was like, when I listen to podcasts, because I was a huge podcast connoisseur at the time and still am, I'm like, those are the two things that I was like, I'm not sacrificing on.
Yep.
Amen.
So what I heard is I was a good salesman. So
Yes,
I'm gonna
you
write
need to
that
give
down.
yourself more credit for that because I know you don't think you are anymore.
Go Liz.
Yeah. But no, seriously, I couldn't have picked a better co-host. And the reason I say that is Jenna is I'm going to give her compliments here. She's very well spoken and she asks all the right questions. So I sometimes feel like I'm there for moral support and all the back end stuff, which I'm 110% okay with. Because that means I don't have to like talk and like be weird and stuff. So no, it's been a great relationship and I feel like outside of the podcast, she's become very close and we talk every day. So it's been a very good mutual connection, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think our strengths and weaknesses like perfectly integrate with each other, which is really funny to say about somebody we still have never met.
You've never met in person?
Nope.
No, I was absolutely going to Liz's wedding this summer. And then I had a yearling that like will not sweat. I mean, he just will not sweat. And it was 105 degrees and it's hard to
Ponies
leave.
come first. So
yeah. I hate it. Yeah. I still feel awful about it, but horse people, if anybody understands, it's horse people.
Yep.
So yeah, no, we have not met in person yet.
Soon, hopefully. That's our goal this coming year. So we're going to make that happen.
Can't wait to see the pictures.
I know, right? Yeah, me too.
It happened. We finally met. I love it.
I almost feel like we need like AI pictures of us together just to like, because I feel like I feel like we know each other so well.
We do. Yeah. We just
crazy.
Haven't met. It's fine.
It's really crazy.
It's good. So many things you said sound very familiar and far more fresh for me or recent, having just started in March. But I'm with you on sound quality and consistency. Like we made a commitment to these people, to our listeners, to this community. It's going to happen. My pet peeve that I would add is too many ads.
Mm-hmm.
When I have to listen to a bunch of ads at the beginning of somebody's podcast, and I'm probably driving, so fast forwarding is not really an easy option. Or when there's a lot right in the middle, like I'm just getting into it and then it cuts like a little bit here and there, but I want the meat.
Yep.
But
yeah, I think it's a hard balance because obviously as podcasters and especially people like us, we are not, I mean, this is a money losing venture for us. You know, there are expenses involved with just getting it even out there. It's not a free, it's not a free thing to make a podcast. And so it's super nice to have advertisers and sponsors to help cover that cost. But as a listener, I mean, yeah, I'm the same. I'm like, I can't stand. And the other thing that I don't like with podcasts is when they sound like too curated and perfect in a way.
Agreed.
not that we would even be able to entertain the idea of being that curated and perfect because we don't have production teams and everything to help us. But one of my favorite podcasts when it started was the New Heights podcast with Jason and Travis Kelsey, which is very, very popular. And I still love it, but in a way, like they just got $100 million, podcast deal, of course, because they're famous and Travis is dating Taylor Swift and Jason is on ESPN. They're great. I mean, they absolutely have earned it, but there's so many ads and it's so curated, and I don't think they have authentic conversations anymore. So I was like, we've never wanted to be like, we're professionals or we're perfect or we're trying to even appear to be perfect, because it's not relatable, especially in our world. We're all first people. So we're not tech people. We don't need perfection.
Agreed. Yeah, that's what I was sharing with Liz before we got started was if we just get the basics, like we can hear each other, we can see each other. We're literally coming from the barn to some space in our house and putting some AirPods in and clicking go. And sometimes you can't shine us up.
No, this is the best you get with me. So,
right.
Oh, goodness. Well, has anything changed since you started on the rail? Has anything changed in a significant way from your original vision for the podcast?
Do you want me to take that first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yes and no. So my original intent is still true. I want to get our industry out to the public. I feel like for whatever reason, there's such a negative perception on what we do with our horses. And I'm not going to name the one class that everyone dogs on, but that's why I leaned into doing a podcast, because it's public information that anyone can find. But also, it's a way to like show people that we actually do care about our horses. We want what's best for them. And so I don't think the intent has changed, but the way we have kind of went around getting that content has changed. And what I mean by that is like a year and a half or so into podcasting, we started doing these roundtables, which bring in a wide variety of opinions from professionals, amateurs, etc., judges, even association personnel. And that just gives us all of the opinions that everyone has, some actual facts, and just more knowledge for people to hear things. So the roundtables have really, I think, taken off just because there is that wide variety of opinions, but it allows people to like gather their own opinion about it without being told how they should feel, if that makes sense. So I think it's kind of changed, like how we have done it has kind of changed, but the intent has not changed, if that makes sense. Maybe Jenna has something to add to that.
No, I really don't. I think that is very well said. Trying to think of like changes. I think on a personal level, we certainly have had thoughts change and adapt. And we try to for the most part, keep our personal opinions and motivations outside of the podcast, because that's not what the podcast is for. We want it to be as neutral as possible, but the problem with even trying to be neutral in the horse industry sometimes is that you're offending both sides, or three sides or four sides, like whatever, however many, and by nature, you're going to get pushback with that. So, that's always something. Your skin grows thicker by the day, I think. And I don't know if you've had to run into any of that. I think as our following like grows and gets bigger, or the platform, and I hate to even use those words because I think it sounds chintzy and stupid, but if just with more people listening or eyes or ears on things happening, then you're also in the line of fire for it. So that's, been an interesting thing to overcome.
Yeah.
Or not overcome, but just handle.
Yes. I agree with that. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think Jenna is right. Like more so our personal feelings or motivations or inspirations have changed as we've been two and some months into this. Like we're at 112 episodes, I think. 113. I don't remember which one I'm editing at the moment, but um it's been a personal growth journey more than the intent of the podcast changing. So
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's made us better.
Yeah.
Made us better as people, like as far as trying to center where we're at with everything and getting comfortable talking to people and
Yes.
dealing with things. I know when we started from a tech side, like we were paying editors to do our editing and not happy with that. So Liz has taken that over in the last, year, 6 months, something like that.
It's probably been like at least 6 months, maybe 8 months, somewhere in there. But the price that we were paying to have these people edit the podcast was wild. And we didn't like how they were editing. Like they left no laughter in it. They like cut out our little like, giggles and whatever, or like, yeah, like those things. And that's not what we wanted. But at the time, we were like, how do we edit this thing? I don't know how to edit. So figured that out. And I feel like it's made the podcast better in that way, just because now you can get like our personal touches within the episode without losing our personality. So
yeah, it was weird. We either had like no expression and personality to it because they would edit the crap out of it, you know, or it was not edited at all, but yet we were paying all this money. Yeah. Like what? I don't know. So I don't know. Do you, Amy, do you do your own editing or do you have an editor?
So I edit the audio and then I have a friend who edits the video or creates the video essentially. And I don't take anything out unless there's been a break in somebody's connection. And so if somebody is just sitting there waiting for the other person to come back, I cut that out, but I literally don't take anything else out.
Right.
I maybe put something like a retouch, if you will, or it's called normalizing and sometimes compression to help balance the volume out. If I'm really loud and my guest is quiet, or when I started, I used to speak really quietly, which is actually not even like me. I'm not typically a quiet person, but for some reason I was speaking softly and had to keep increasing my volume. So as I've learned, and I got a microphone and I've learned how to prepare my space. Like I'm not in my normal studio today, but have just learned a lot. And so essentially very minimal in the production side of things. I don't pull out pauses if somebody's thinking. One of the reasons is from the start, I have provided video and audio. And so if you watch the video and somebody is clearly sitting back thinking about their answer, you're going to capture dead space in the audio. Because I want, I don't think people are criticizing audio versus video, but I'm looking for authenticity. And quite honestly, sometimes I have to finish an episode, edit the audio really quickly and send it because life during the show season for us moves so fast. And so I don't have margin I would like to sit and pick and scooch and move and, I don't have time for that. So my goal is just to get the content out for this community. And so you get what you get as long as you can hear it and it's quality when you're riding down the road or you're on the back of your horse. I want it to sound good, but it's going to have some bumps and bruises at times.
Yeah, you're so right. When you said like the different varying volumes, that's another pet peeve of mine when you're listening to a podcast. If like one person that's talking, you have to like turn your volume up in your AirPods and then the next one's so loud, you go like turn it down. I'm like, that drives me crazy. So that was one thing that you want the editing to fix. As far as content, we take nothing out of ours except for, if there's like a tech issue that hits, or occasionally one of us will have like a complete brain fart or laugh about something and we're like, well, we can cut that out. Other than that, we take no content as far as, like I know people think you could have a curated content or change the narrative. I'm like, we do none of that. And we tell all of our guests that. I was like, we never cut out any content or context of anything. We've had a few guests or people that have requested certain sentences or statements be taken out, and that will remain private to them and their needs. But those are few and far between. I mean, that's probably less than 5, I would think, at the total at this point. So yeah, we try to keep it very authentic and you just edit the bare minimum so you can get it out. And like you said, it's hard. I mean, we've always wanted to have a lot of episodes in the tank to not be like strapped on time or something. But this time of year, especially from like once World Show season starts in the summer for different breeds, and then Congress, and it's hard. Everybody's so busy right now, and it gets a little easier in the cold days to bank some episodes.
I have 6 or 7 people who've said yes, but not yet. Wait until after all the majors are over. From halter makers to hat makers to folks who are just, they are working nonstop right now, in addition to exhibitors. But there's a lot happening behind the scenes.
A lot of moving parts.
Yes, agreed. So how, one of the things that I'm curious to know from your side of things is how, in your opinion, has your podcast helped the industry?
Oof.
That's
you take that.
You want me to?
Yeah, take that. That's a big one.
I think in our entire it's not just the industry, but it's our current state of tech and culture is that everything is so short form, so fast, TikTok videos and Instagram reels, and nobody watches anything for more. I mean, to get somebody to watch something for 15 seconds anymore is hard, let alone 30 seconds or beyond. So it's crazy that long form content like this actually works, but I think it does because podcasting allows an avenue for it to be completely authentic to the message, and whatever the message is. Like, you don't even have to agree with it. Everybody can sort out their own podcasts and whatnot, but it's not put out by another app or an algorithm or something that's going to feed it to you. So you can seek it out. And also, podcasting allows you to listen to things while you're driving, while you're working in the barn, while you're at the gym, whatever you're doing. So I think, as a culture, long form podcasts have gotten more and more popular, and I think they continue to. That's why, Joe Rogan got paid hundreds of millions of dollars to podcast. And we always joke, we're like, we're coming for you, Joe Rogan. We're not, but that's our joke.
I'll be grabbing onto your coattails saying, where we going?
Yeah, we'll take us all out there. And, Travis, the Kelce's just got paid $100 million for theirs. So it's like, I think podcasting's the new horizon, which I say that it's not new, but there's an avenue for it. And for the horse industry specifically, the horse industry is I think it's like 10 years behind the regular world,
I'd agree,
quote unquote, regular world on tech stuff, which is still an interesting conversation, even when you're trying to get guests to interview. But, so podcasting in the horse industry is really, especially our subset of the horse industry, is quite new. And it's just allowing a platform to have real conversations, whatever those conversations are, from people that you may have known or heard the name of or saw in a magazine or just are Facebook friends with or anything. And that really makes it more relatable to just hear the one-on-one conversations, I feel.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think because our little section of the universe over here has not gotten with technology, I think that's why we've been able to grow like we have. We just have that option to have those conversations that nobody's ever have. And I think from all of the reviews we've gotten, like, that's been the number one thing, is like, thank you for the conversations that nobody's had. Like, I think that's how we've been able to, I don't want to say help, but I don't even want to say better the industry, but just give people the option to actually form an opinion, know what's happening from people that are like doing the things, if that makes sense. So I think because of our lacking technology, it's helped us out a little bit in the podcasting realm.
Mhm.
So
That's good.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I think one that, not that like the horse industry has a gatekeeping problem necessarily. I mean, I think certain people, subsets of the industry maybe has a gatekeeping problem on certain information, but it's just the having a platform to just even have these discussions of, you know, like when I was a high school kid, a high school senior, largely like a DIYer, and I was scouring the Chronicle, but you are still looking at all of that from an outside perspective. And podcasting has allowed the ability to talk to people and things that give you a more insider's look that benefits everybody. So it's democratizing information a little bit, maybe. I'm not sure. Like, these are my own, you know, like grandiose thoughts, I suppose, but I don't see there's any downside to it. I really don't.
Yeah.
What about
I
you?
would agree. So what I'm getting in regard to feedback from people tends to be individuals, DIYers who are appreciative of having access to trainers who they either feel they could never afford, they don't live nearby, or they're intimidated by a big name trainer. And we, you know, our pool is significantly smaller than yours as far as trainers and classes and numbers of people. So it gets to be pretty close knit and small when you think about it. So people who've just been appreciative that there's information specific to halter horses, because I can benefit from listening to your podcast because I love horses. And when you talk about the movement of a horse, I'm still interested in the movement of my own horse, even though what he does when he's in the ring is different than you. So, um, I have felt encouragement from listeners who've said, thank you, because when I listened to this episode, I made a change in my program and it's really helped. So I've seen in small bits improvement, I guess, in that way. I think the other thing that has happened for me in being an observer, honestly, I'm sitting in front of my guest and I hear over and over again how welcoming the halter industry is, how welcoming people are at the horse shows. I'm not picking for that or begging for that information. It's a pretty consistent theme, which I would say is not necessarily what you hear sometimes, whether it's halter or any other aspect of the stock horse industry, which I think we both are involved in and passionate about. I think we hear a variety of opinions, some of them very unpleasant, about the welcoming aspect or the hospitality of a certain subset of people who are at the shows. And so I think I used this phrase when I was interviewed by you guys. I was 2 or 3 episodes in. I was so brand new, and you guys invited me to be on your podcast, and I used the phrase productive positivity. And I hadn't said that before. It just came out when I was responding to a question. And that is something that I think about regularly, trying to be not just unicorns and rainbows, not just only presenting the shiny side, but some making it productive, unsolicited, honestly, is how the information is coming out. So I haven't delved into the roundtable conversations as much, and those tend to bring out even more, not only opinions, but more of a global perspective of the industry. And I think it's helpful to have those. So I've just had one in 28 episodes. I've had one roundtable, but in the off season, I'm looking forward to doing that more to help reveal more trends, more, deep-seated rumors or, stuff that people think about the halter industry that isn't necessarily true, such as genetics. Like that's a whole animal in and of itself. So yeah, I think overall, I'm hopeful at this point that it has helped.
I think one of the hardest things with our small part of an industry, because the horse industry is large in the United States, but when you're talking just stock horses, and then we even kind of break it up into, I mean, Amy, you do halter horses, and we're whatever the stock horses are for us. But
Mhm.
everybody wants a little bit something different from what they listen to, and certainly you're totally like balls in your court for what you want to listen to. In my opinion, things that are complete fluff pieces, we have enough of that. You
Mhm.
know, that if it's all just
Mhm.
sunshine and rainbows
Right.
24/7, there's tons of that
Mhm.
in either written or other, social media content, something. And the tough balance is talking about some of the things in our industry that can be improved, not from a critical point necessarily to like poo poo on things, but like just bringing it to light that this is how we can make us all better. And
Mhm.
as the industry continues to shrink, how do we get new people here? Why would they even want to come hang out with us? I always say like play in our sandbox with us,
Yeah.
so there's such a fine balance and of balancing, keeping conversations real, but not either being too fluffy, sunshines and rainbows, but then also feeling like you're being overcritical either. And I know that's something we kind of, I don't know what the word, like we don't waffle on it, but we kind of ebb and flow with things. And I think that's just going to be the nature of it. Sometimes we feel like things have been a little more negative, or then it gets to like more fluff pieces and you kind of got to bring it back to being more in the middle. And I don't know if you've even had a chance to, if that's even something that has occurred to you yet, but I know that's something I think in the last year, particularly, like we've really had to, I don't know if we struggle with the balance of it, but it's been an interesting ride for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. For me, it honestly right now boils down to who is willing to be interviewed, because I have struggled in getting ahead, especially during the show season. For us, I've struggled having episodes in the hopper.
Yeah.
And just when I think I do, then somebody has to cancel for a variety of reasons. And so I don't always have the luxury of balancing a little bit of personal celebration stories with meat and substance on nutrition. And so sometimes I'm just alternating
You're just
between,
trying to hang on. I mean, we've
yeah,
kind of been
yeah,
there. We've been there a little bit.
yeah,
The summer's been the hardest, I think, for us for getting people's schedule. It's everybody's schedules are crazy. So,
it is. Yeah.
yeah, we certainly understand.
Yep. Between trying to get guests and then our own schedule, it's
Mhm.
tough. But um, then I'm surprised and I get a guest who I never thought I would get, and or a listener who suggests a topic. I'm like, ugh, had never thought of that. I don't know why, but here we go. And I go and ask somebody, they say yes. So I'm getting to the point now where it's in ways a little bit more sustainable, I think.
I love when you
So
get somebody on though that you don't really know that well, and then you just talk to them, and you're like, I had no idea, but this person is
right.
Mhm.
freaking amazing. And
Yes.
that is also exciting about podcasting because it's like you get to share that, the majority of people may not know or not know the story or kind of how they operate. And I'm like, that's so cool. I mean, we've had several of them that we've gotten off. I mean, we've had a couple that were like, eh. I mean, we love all of our guests and we're super happy, but some of them were just like that was not quite as smooth as we wanted. And some of that's our
Right.
fault too. But then you have, I mean, we've got definitely a handful that we've been like, holy crap, they were awesome. Like I'm a huge
Mhm.
Yeah.
fan now.
Yeah.
So
So with that, who's been, and whether you mention the name or not, but maybe the most meaningful guest or topic that you guys have done?
Ooh.
I'll
Am I
let you
going
go.
first on that?
Yep.
Okay. The most impactful for me was Amber Duckett, one and only assets owner. Her story in general is wild to me, crazy, almost doesn't seem real what she went through and has overcome. So that was like very inspirational to me personally. And then as far as like topics that we've covered that actually have like been impactful to me as well is the recent one that we did on taking a break, because I think everyone should know that horses will always be here. It's okay to take a break if you need to for your mental health. But yeah, those two probably have been the most impactful. And then, of course, I love everyone else that we've had on the podcast, as Jenna's said, but those probably have been the most impactful for me. What about you, Jenna?
Let's see. I think one of our most recent ones with Stephanie Lynn from NSBA was just, I was so encouraged and refreshed with her outlook on things, because I'm like, I feel like she, or if it's she or NSBA, I'm like, they get it. They get where the struggles are and kind of where the industry is headed a little bit. And that's really encouraging to see, because I don't always feel that way. One of Liz, you're gonna laugh at this, but we did the drugs roundtable podcast like last spring. I can't remember. We had a couple people on from the associations talk about drug rules, everything, and that probably still is the hardest podcast I've ever, like, getting all the guests on at one point and agreeing to it and to talk about it because of the nature of the conversation was probably the hardest one that I spent the most time on, like orchestrating and massaging and trying to convince people. And I don't even know what the listener numbers ended up on that, but it was like for the amount of time that went into that thing. And it was such like, we got done with it and we were like, yes,
we did it.
We got it done.
Yeah.
And it definitely wasn't like one that took off, but probably my most like personal satisfaction to get that one done. And then I was like, I think our Western Pleasure, we had the Western Pleasure discussion between Katie, Joe, and Aaron. Certainly that was probably the biggest one ever. And then subsequently the judges after that to kind of respond to it. And the saddest part to me about all of that is I don't think anything. I mean, I was like, we just continue to kick the can down the road. So,
It was very intriguing conversation though, like in that Western Pleasure episode, and then the corresponding judges episode, but also the conversation that it created on Facebook was very interesting to read as well.
And I kind of feel like we pissed off everyone.
Yeah. I don't think we made one person happy on that episode. So.
No, I was like, I think we pissed off the judges. I think we pissed off the association people. I think the trainers were pissed and owners were crying. But here we are. I mean,
here you are.
Yeah.
Keep on trucking.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think your favorite one or best one or whatever you want to call it so far has been? It's hard.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed the trainer roundtable. That was just a couple of episodes ago. I think partly because it came about through one of those guests. It was an idea that one of them had. He said, hey, I think we should do this. I appreciate when people are invested in this podcast effort, because it not only is it helpful at a very base level, it helps me, but it just speaks to, I'm a skin in the game kind of person. So I'm all in. I like people who are all in. And this person came to me and said, I have this idea. What do you think about this? I said, yes. Who should join me? Because I don't have a lot of brain cells left in the summer to think about people to invite. And if somebody's thought about it, I want to give them an opportunity to, again, have some skin in the game. He suggested 2 names. Next thing you know, I contact all of them. It comes together. They all said, yes, we got it done. And so on the front end, it was a fun, quick put together. And then the episode itself, I appreciated that we had 3 people from different walks of the industry talking about breaking your halter horse to ride and really kind of debunking some of the myths that people think that they literally can't ride their halter horse. And for me, I was hoping to reach the person who's been told by a trainer or who's been told by a non-halter person, well, it's a halter horse. You don't ride those horses. And really squashing the future that a person sees with their animal that they love because somebody has said, it's a halter horse. You don't ride a halter horse, or it can't be broke, or because it has HYPP, you can't ride it. Like, none of that is true. So speaking to the industry as a whole, but also hopefully really capturing the person who's been discouraged. So in that particular episode, there was a lot happening for me that I enjoyed. And then there's some people who I've interviewed who I literally was sitting there fangirling.
Yeah.
Like, I looked at ads with you showing a halter horse when I was a kid, and now you're in front of me. And yeah. So like, Clint Fullerton was one of those people. I messaged him on Facebook. He said yes. He was a quick yes. He said, ask me whatever you want to ask me. And the response from people about that episode, people were not only appreciative of the content because he got really into the weeds about what a judge wants, what a judge sees, the kinds of things that you need to be paying attention to in the ring, and forget about this stuff and really watch these things. Like, it was really granular for us. And there was a lot of positive response about that. Like, thank you for bringing him on to, he's such a great guy, admire him, but now I know some very specific things that I'm going to do the next time I walk into the ring. So really practical, which is, my hope is to bring really practical content, because we don't have access to halter trainers. Maybe if you live in Texas, but I'm in the Midwest and I'm out in the country and I don't have access to people to help fine tune what I'm doing. And so to bring somebody on who gives that has been really good. So I'd say those are two of mine.
Isn't it kind of funny that people, you're shocked at how receptive they are? Like when you message them, you're like, I'm just going to throw a line out there and see if they say it. And then there's some that you would never expect it. And they're like, yes, absolutely. Let me know, whatever you need. And then there's others that is
make it really hard.
Make it really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. But that's
the
people
professionals,
in general.
the big name people, the professionals who me as an amateur would say, these are big name people. Okay. Been in it a long time, showing in the open division, having a lot of success. They've been the quickest yes, honestly. And I don't mean to say that disparagingly of amateurs, but I think what plays into it for an amateur sometimes is just general insecurity about being in front of a camera and being interviewed and nervous about answering questions. Yeah. And so on the other side of it, our professionals have had just more experience and opportunity at speaking, at, just general experience in this kind of platform. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Transitioning to Halter, one of the things that I was hoping to pick your brains about is you're on the performance horse side of things. What does the Halter community need to know from your perspective, not only from a podcaster perspective, but when you go to a horse show and you see halter people and they're, not the performance halter folks, but the halter folks, what do we need to know from your perspective?
You want me to go or you want to go?
You can go. I'm still thinking of an answer on that one.
When I was growing up, I will say it was the halter people and the riding people, and there wasn't a lot of crossover. And I did at that time feel, and this, I'm not saying this is what it was. This is my outsider impression. And I, of course, was not like a who's who in the industry. So it's not like I knew everybody either. So, but I felt like it was like this kind of very niche club of people that they just did this with their horses, and that's all they did either. I mean, like, you put all this money and time into this horse, and to take it and show it in a class or two and stand there, and you're basically paying the same or more, even more than what we do for performance horses to feed and train for that one class. And so that was always like, that's a weird thing to me. And I didn't at the time at least feel like the halter people were overtly friendly or welcoming. Not saying that's how it was. That was my thoughts. I do think more in the last years of so, and I hate to even use this word, but I was like, I feel like the halter industry has been humbled in a way that the performance industry has coming. And the halter industry is on the upswing from that in a positive direction. And the performance industry is still on their downtrend. And I don't think we've hit rock bottom with it. This, again, personal opinions here, not speaking for anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I do, even like through your podcast, the different articles, people, Facebook, whatever, I was like, I think the halter industry people are doing a really good job right now of trying to appear welcoming and friendly and like ask us questions, like if, come to the show, like you can, I almost feel like if I went to a halter show, like a big halter show, like the Breeders' Halter person, like I feel like I could walk up to almost anybody and, not grab them in a moment of panic or stress, but like ask them a question. And I don't feel intimidated by that. And I think that is huge for the halter industry. I also am so encouraged that they are embracing adding a little bit of, I know the Halter Futurity did like the yearling lunge line and the ranch side of things, but it's still halter horses. So they're still embracing and utilizing their own horses. They're not trying to bring that side in, but I just think the welcoming element to it has changed, in my opinion, significantly. And that's really encouraging. And I hope eventually our performance side can do the same.
I would have to agree with you. I never thought of it that way. What I was going to say is I do feel like halter has gotten this upswing lately, like Jenna said. And just to touch a little bit more on that, I know the one halter show that just finished up, I think in September, the Halter Millions, maybe. I don't remember which one exactly, but don't they have like a DIY division where you strictly are just a DIY and you can come show? I think that's super impressive. But honestly, what I was gonna say is kind of like backwards a little bit over the last, I want to say like year and a half. I work some Indiana quarter horse shows, and it's been very intriguing. If you guys need to fill a class to get some points, I feel like more of us performance people are more willing to do that now. And I think that's really cool. That's where I was going to go with that. So for any halter people, if you just approach somebody, they might, help you fill a class. And that's just something I've noticed over in Indiana. And I think that's really cool. Obviously, we could still go into our performance class, but to help some halter people out that haul in for the day, they've been more than willing to fill a class for somebody. So that's been pretty impressive to watch. So
I see a lot of people talk about riding their halter horses, even if they're not showing their halter horses under saddle or doing like that. But that's like one way to exercise them at home. So it's easier for a more, like a regional level amateur to think like, well, I could have a halter horse, like go show it as a halter horse. But at home, at least you can ride it around and, kind of just still mess around with your horse like we all like to do. So I don't know. I was like, I could be completely way off base. This is my outsider view on it, but I'm really encouraged by what the halter industry is doing.
I really appreciate your perspectives. I've only been showing at the breed level for just finished our second season. I have personally experienced the environment that you're talking about today. And then what you said about your impression as a young girl, Jenna, thinking these people are paying the same amount I am, but they're only showing in 2 classes and it's all they do. Like, yes, that's still true. That's still true to an extent. We are making the same inputs in regard to workouts and grooming and feed and blanketing and all the things. And we go to a show, and I'll use myself as an example. 2 classes, open, amateur. And if it's a show that has grand and reserve, we hopefully get into the grand and reserve to get more points. But our ability to amass points is a significantly smaller than a performance horse. It's what I'm choosing to do. So no fault of anybody else. I am there to show in 2 classes, and then I put my horse back in the trailer and go home, and I'm I still have a bit of a weekend left depending on where my show is, but
Mhm.
I've experienced that welcoming environment, and um, I have entered the scene in that growth. I think that growth season that you're talking about, where there's as much innovation as possible. There's as many creative ideas coming to the table as possible to try and grow the industry. Also, I think I'm seeing a trend, a shift in how the horses look. Not as heavily muscled. I know that the halter industry has gotten criticized for years based on the size of the horses, and is that necessary, and the heavy muscling, and of course the genetic um, diseases and all of that. I would agree. We're coming out of that and heading in a new direction. Adding to that, ranch riding, a lot of classes that help bring more people in, and there's a heavy emphasis on classes for older horses. We're not just stopping at the
Mhm.
yearling and 2-year-olds. It's 3 and 4, and there's incentives to keep showing your halter horse to extend the usability and to allow younger generations to come into the picture. I could bring my son and my grandson into the ring, um, and my horse might be 8 years old, whereas before we might have shipped a horse down the road at age 2 or something. So I appreciate your perspective, um, and glad to hear that it is that you're seeing some uptick in things. Do you have any questions? I don't know that I could answer them all, but what questions do you have about halter horses, the halter division, or anything related to halter?
I would say, what have you noticed in the last year or 2 or 3 that has really, in your opinion, I guess your specific opinion, like
Mhm.
revolutionized the halter industry from the show side? I mean, I know there's the Breeders' Halter Fraternity. They continue to innovate. There's the Halter Million. There's, God knows the stuff I don't even know about, but what has really been encouraging for you?
I think because of the way I'm wired, I'm after success with my horse and community with the people. So I'm a split introvert extrovert. So the extrovert in me loves to get to the horse show because it's the icing on the cake. This is what we've worked for. Um, and when I get to the horse show, I'm as excited about the people as I am about showing my horse. And that welcoming environment that you mentioned, every single show I've been to, and maybe it's just me because I'm walking in thinking I'm going to say hi to everybody, and I'm relatively outgoing, but I have experienced asking a question of professionals, and they're very willing to answer. Being invited to not only a meal with people, but invited to stall with people, just the community of all that. And it's small. There's a small group, but I would say on that social side of things, I'm experiencing the welcoming environment that so many of my guests are talking about. Um, on the horse side of things, um, I appreciate the ways that some of the leaders in the halter industry are not only looking for financial incentives. Of course, that's super helpful. Um, but they're quickly recognizing a problem and trying to fix a problem. For example, the Breeders' Halter Futurity, that's actually the show with the DIY division. Um, and there was previously no, I'm mixing the two shows up. The Halter Million. The Halter Million had Breeders' Halter Futurity does have a DIY division, and they're super innovative. And they've got a lot of folks who are on that board who are bringing marketplace experience into the horse industry to help kind of spark things on. At the Halter Million, it's a partnership between APHA and WCHA, and there was a ranch class that was offered at the Halter Million towards the end. People were saying they love it, however, they weren't registering for the class. And so a decision had to be made to cancel the class. And as soon as that notification went out, hey, nobody's registered. You say you want it, but nobody's registered. We have to have people registered for the class. Quickly on Facebook, lots of buzz. Hey, don't cancel it. Don't cancel it. There were some grassroots efforts to get that class filled enough to make it worth it, to pay the judges. The overhead expense is exorbitant. And so the communication I was impressed by and pleased with. I'm a member of this organization, and you're getting information out ahead of time to say, hey, here's what's happening, here's why, and here's how we can fix it. So news came, somebody brought a solution, and the class was able to happen. I think 7-ish entries. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere around there. So it was enough to make it worthwhile because people had spent money to supply prizes and prize money, really nice incentives to participate in the class, and yet nobody's signing up. So it just kind of calls to account people who say they want to do something and they're just waiting until the last minute to sign up. For me, it exhibits a level of professionalism, a level of communication, and then that skin in the game. Somebody said, hey, let's not let this die. Let's put your name down, register for the class, and let's make sure it happens, and then make sure it happens again next year. So those are the kinds of things that I'm seeing, and it's how I'm wired. It's what I'm looking for in an experience that you may not be looking for, or Liz may not be looking for. But when I go to a horse show, there's a certain set of things that I'm hopeful for, and not only are my needs met, but I'm encountering people who are working really hard as well. So
it's really neat to see that the halter industry is, I know it's a smaller group, and maybe I think that's a good thing right now. You probably, for lack of a better word, again, nobody take offense to this, but like kind of got rid of some of the dead weight in it that a lot of industries suffer from. But you can like move and shake faster, make decisions, make changes faster than trying to turn the Titanic around, which is where we're at with a lot of other things. So that's good for you guys.
Yeah. Any other questions about halter?
I mean, I could have 1 million on all the halter horse things, but I won't today.
What's something that you look at and you're like, I don't get it. Why do you guys do that? Is there anything like that?
No, I mean,
yeah.
were you gonna
I
say
don't have
something?
anything. No. No, I kind of understand the general gist of making the horse look good, standing up.
Yeah.
All of those things. No, I don't have anything like that.
The only thing that I wondered for a long time was why they put like lip chains and lip cords on darn near every horse that showed, even if it's like not a horse that needs shown. But then I think it's for expression or something sometimes. Is that what it is? Because it's not on all wild horses out there. So
Right.
That was always one thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't know that I have a solid answer for that, because I sometimes wonder myself. What I've noticed is that some horses, it decreases the expression. They're so preoccupied with it, and it makes them just put their nose up, which you're not necessarily looking for an open angle at the throat latch and nose high in the air. Yes, nose out, but I feel like for some horses it's distracting, and maybe the handler doesn't acknowledge that they could just take the lip chain off quickly and show the horse, and the horse might show better or nicer looking. I don't have enough experience in using a lip chain. Our horse is too slow and too deadheaded with a lip cord. I don't use a lip chain. I have tried a lip cord, and I haven't noticed that it enhances his particular expression. I think there are some horses who might need it, perhaps, as a means of control, but yeah, I don't really have a great answer for that, because I just don't know. I don't have enough experience.
I'm sure there are some that do need it actually for control, but I could also see it as being a like cue. Like, this is your show ring equipment, and when you have this on, They kind of
Yes.
know. I mean, that's like, I mean, I had a
Yes.
mare I rode in Western Pleasure. And then when I changed all of her tack and put a hackmore on her and put boots on her, like we went and ran barrels and she was a whole different horse. So it's like,
Yes.
I can see how that could just be their cue from a non-horse person, like not even a performance horse person, but a non-horse person, they were like, why are they like have these things through their mouth? That's just like,
Mhm.
but it is an education thing of being like, this
Yeah.
is their tack. That's their cue to
Yep.
perform in the class. And that's kind of how I've always just interpreted it lately, but
Mhm.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. The only time we put the show halter on is when we're right before class. And I think there's a definite element to that as well. And the more you practice with it, typically the more comfortable they are with it. I feel like it's kind of a delicate subject in regard to folks who think it's abusive. But it tends to be similar to a twitch where you're getting an endorphin response. So yeah.
Personally, I would love to learn sometime of how to look at a horse to know it's perfectly square when you're standing next to it. It's easier to see like when you're back on the rail if it's standing square, but even, for my own performance horse halter or something, it's hard to know if they're perfectly square. And then also how you get them to, especially with our performance horses, not fall asleep and like stand there and put their ears up and look halfway alive during the class. So those are things I would like to learn at some point.
Yeah.
So listen to
Yeah.
your podcast.
Yeah, that's right. I'll give you the heads up. I'll tag you in the episode where we talk specifically about setting up. That's an episode that hasn't happened yet that I
Perfect.
am in search of the right
Yeah. I was
person
like,
who
I can
do
tell
that.
when I'm far enough away, but when you're standing right
Yes.
there, it's hard. At least it is for me. I can never get it right.
It is for me, and it's the only thing I do is set my horse up. And it's still hard for me to maximize how he looks and his
Mhm.
profile. You really can't hide stuff, but there is an element to maximizing who he is as an individual in
Right.
that setup. And, he looks better with his head and neck this way, whereas somebody else might lower the head and neck to,
Yeah.
I
I
there's
mean,
all sorts of
it's
little elements, but
it's a game of inches or less than
Yeah.
inches at that point when you're talking like
yes.
perfect setups. And I don't have an eye for it. I cannot see it. I mean, I do my best guess. And then if somebody takes a picture, I step away. I'm like, well, that's not what I thought it looked like.
Exactly. That's what's really helpful is somebody on the rail who knows how to get a picture where they're at the right angle so that you can benefit from and seeing how you look compared to other horses.
Yeah.
It's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, looking at the future, we've talked a little bit about technology and tools, but how do you see what we're doing or what might be on the horizon helping the horse industry in the future?
Personally speaking, I applaud APHA for their Horse IQ website. I feel like that's very beneficial for amateurs that, especially DIY, that maybe need to learn the rule book or what their horses should be looking like moving along the rail, etc. As far as podcasting goes, I'd like to hope that we're on the right track of providing, the education, dialogue, content for people to keep, educating themselves, welcome new people in. Futuristically, Jenna kind of touched on this earlier about like TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever. Unfortunately, I don't think that's ever going to go away. So if any association people are listening to this, I feel like we need to take heed and create short form information for the public. Like, we're going to be under fire until people understand the idea of what we're about and what we do. And it's not bad for the horses. This is what they're meant to do, sort of thing. So yeah, to any association, if you could get your marketing people to do short form education for the general public, not for us, but just so the general public kind of understands what we're doing. I feel like we're the only aspect of the horse industry that has not been, on TV, has not been publicized in that way. We haven't been on the big screen. So people just don't understand who we are. And I think that is where we need to put some of our eggs in that basket. It's just the public knowledge.
Okay. Any exciting projects or collaborations in the future?
No, we
On the
always
rail?
talk about, we want to do a remote podcast, like from a show sometime.
Sometime.
And neither one of us has been showing lately. So it's hard when you're sitting at home with all your animals and stuff. You're like, I don't really want to, I don't want to leave my house right now. We'll fly. So we talked about maybe next year, I think the National Open Show Horse Association, the NSBA runs, I am all about that idea and that. So maybe that will be our first remote podcasting idea next year. I don't know. We need to do one sometime. And then we also always joke about doing like in studio podcast when we have hair and makeup people to make us look nice so we can have video just like you, because we don't do video.
There's no hair and makeup happening here at all, but you get what you get. I had big hopes and dreams in my first year to try and do some live episodes. I had even talked to Stephanie Lynn about going to the show in Cloverdale, Indiana. Yeah, it's a bigger undertaking than I had imagined. And I've had some guests who've wanted to record their own episode live. And what I haven't figured out yet is the controlling the ambient noise. When you're at a horse show, it's, you got the announcer, you have the fans, all that stuff is going on, horses whinnying. And how do you make sure that the equipment you're using kind of drowns that all out so that the end product is of good enough quality for people to actually hear or even see, for that matter. Yeah, I've taken equipment to horse shows and I'm so I'm on the hustle the whole time I'm there, and so are my friends. And so it's just I've not ever been able to execute that, but yes,
well,
maybe it's in the future.
We can all go to that show in Cloverdale and we'll do it all together and we'll figure it out.
It would be fun.
Yeah. I know there's going to have to be some investment in equipment to not have, like you said, all the ambient noise at a horse show can get wild. So
yeah.
But
yeah. So, if somebody's listening and they're thinking, I kind of want to start a podcast, what advice would you give to somebody? Just a couple of quick thoughts about somebody who's considering a podcast journey. What advice would you give?
Google is your best friend, and do research on, there is 1,000 different types of microphones, headsets, any type of setup. So find something that you're going to be comfortable with and that's in your price point, because you can spend a lot of money trying to find a good microphone, a good headset. Like I said, there's a jillion different variations. So my number one tip is Google is your best friend. Decide what type of podcast, where you want it to stream, what all you're doing, etc. Use Google. It'll help you tremendously. And then just find what price point you're comfortable spending to get started. Because I do feel like that's a huge hang up, is just the expense to get started. But yeah, Google is a great tool.
started and even like ongoing, because there are, just your streaming platforms and your website, and like it's not free to there may be a limited amount where you could do it for very, very little cost, but it's not free to podcast.
Yeah.
So,
but Google is a great tool and it's free.
Yeah, that is. Thank God for Google.
Yes.
And gosh, there's so many AI apps now that you could even ask them, like, how do I start a podcast? And they could probably fill you in on
and as Jenna mentioned, like podcast hosting to platforms. So you got Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Google is no longer a thing. It's now YouTube. Those are all free to post on, but you have to find your host for your RSS feed. And again, Google is a great tool. It'll give you websites that'll list out all of your hosting options and what would be best for you price point wise and what you're looking to accomplish. So again, Google's probably my best tip. You'll learn a lot just off of Google.
I think I read a statistic lately that was like most podcasts don't get past like their first, I don't remember, 3 or 5 episodes or something. Like people start them on, then don't ever do more than that, which is shocking to me. But I also kind of get it. I think the part people see about podcasting is the like 5% where it's being published online or put on social media. And that's the fun, like mirror flash side of it that looks great. But what you don't see is the 95% that is hard work, time, a lot of frustration for different things. And I mean, you have to be committed to that. And the consistency of it, I think, is huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is, I will give another tip, and Jenna hit that one. If you're looking to be a weekly podcast, definitely have some starter episodes in your tank, because starting an episode and then having that next one ready the following week is stressful. So Jenna and I recorded our first ones like August 1st or something, like our maiden, and then we had like 4 or 5 episodes in the bank. So we had our first month good, and that gave us a little breathing room to like figure it out. So definitely figure out what schedule you want to keep. Have plenty of episodes in your tank before you publish that first one, and that'll just alleviate some of your stress right off the bat. So yeah. Consistency.
I would agree.
Yeah, consistency is your number one friend when podcasting, especially depending on where you're wanting to publish on the platforms. They will reward your consistency and push it to more people once they figure out that you're going to be consistent. So that's also a tip that Google will give you as well. So.
I would agree to all that. And I would say for me, because I'm doing this by myself, I think early on determining your capacity to stay in it. And if you feel like you have the capacity to get beyond those first 3 to 5 episodes where most podcasts are failing, then something that it just didn't occur to me at the beginning was a co-host. Or at least a partner. Maybe there's one front runner. I know that the two of you operate, both of you are attending the episode, and then utilizing your different strengths to do the behind the scenes work. I, at this point, have considered, it would be really nice to have somebody not only to share the ideas with, but help use their own sphere of influence to get either more guests or, like it's really hard to keep up with getting a guest, the logistics of that, recording the episode, editing the episode, getting it out, but then keeping a quality social media presence so that, you're mindful of algorithms and data.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And my brain doesn't live in all those categories. My brain's in a couple of those categories, but not all of them at one time. So, a co-host, I think if it's the right person who you get along with and your strengths and weaknesses complement one another, like you mentioned, is something to consider. Every bit of information that I needed to start a podcast was available on Google. Yes. I asked friends who were media marketing, social media kind of folks who would have advice on a microphone. My husband's also very savvy in that area, and he's an insatiable researcher. I am not. I last about 5 minutes. He will go all in on researching microphones, and whatever he orders is just what I need, and I don't even have to think about it. So Google is great. Agreed. Yeah.
We've been really lucky that basically what I'm good at is not as much what Liz is good at, and what she is great at is what I completely suck at and don't even really want to do. And that was completely just luck of the draw that it came. So it's been a great partnership for us that it would be hard to do without. I mean, I don't know that I would want to do this without somebody like Liz in the fold with all of it. So I definitely commend you for everything you do on your own. It's a lot. I mean, that's the thing I said, like with the 5% is what you see when your podcast airs online, but there's a lot of background work that nobody even thinks about till you get into it. And
Yeah.
it never stops either. You know, it's like
Mhm.
every
Right.
week. If you have
Every
weekly
week.
episodes, it's
Yeah.
always ongoing. So
It
yeah.
is. Yeah. So, last question related to the podcast. If you could interview any current rock star or historical icon in the horse industry, who would it be and why? And if it's a horse, that fits as well.
Hmm. I would, this is going to be so cheesy, but invitation only was like the horse for me when I was growing up. Like that, I feel like that horse single-handedly led me to wanting to show at such a high level.
Mhm.
And I would just have to ask, like, what is it like to be like that front runner of the modern day pleasure horse? I don't
Mm.
know. I've always just loved that horse. I don't know what it was about him, but anything invitation only has my name on it. Like I just, I don't know. He's my like dream horse, I guess. I don't know. There was something about him when I was growing up that was just, he was a reason.
Yeah.
I it's I mean, there's a lot of people I would casually love to chat with. I have so many people I admire and respect. Thank God we have the podcast we can do that with. Wish we
Right.
could talk to some of the great horses out there too. But honestly, I would wish I ever had the privilege or would love to have the privilege to talk to Lynn Simons. The first interaction we had with him was we were getting ready to breed my youth high school open show Western Pleasure mare to
Mhm.
Zippo Sensation. We had no idea how to like ship semen and do all that and the whole breeding game. And my dad's the best human on the planet. But he called down and had got Lynn on the phone, and Lynn just walked him through everything. And sorry about my dogs barking. And it was so wonderful. And I know everybody respects the hell out of him. He was very accomplished, a great man, raised two beautiful women, and all three of Andrea, Sarah, and Janet are still incredibly successful. Shortly after that was when he was killed in his car accident, and never got a pleasure to meet him in person. But I've heard so many great things about him, and I just feel like he had like that aura of wisdom and kindness that I wish I could talk to.
Yeah. It's a good one.
If not that, then maybe Zippo Pine Bar.
Oh yeah,
Ah.
he's a good one too.
What about you, Amy?
I would say a couple of the horses that I see on a lot of halter horse papers, to see them in person and see how their body and their type has influenced the industry. Playgirl's Conclusion, I Got a Cool Secret, Touchdown Kid, and there are a host of others. But when I look at papers and I see people mentioning repeatedly certain, mare lines, or dam lines, sire lines, those are some of the names of horses that I would like to see in person. I see current studs and mares who are influencing the industry, and I see the type of horse that is the halter horse of today that's winning, but it's some of those older ones that I'd be curious to see. And then as far as people are concerned, I really admire the folks who stand a lot of stallions. And there are several people who are currently actively standing a lot of stallions. It's their capacity to remember the myriad, hundreds of babies that have come by a certain stallion, and they stand, 5 stallions, 10 stallions. I think of Color Ranch. I think of the Bradshaws. I think of the Gordons, who have both passed away, but Fossil Gate Farms, you see their stamp on generations of horses, and I'd love to pick their brain about the business side of what they do, but also knowing that they are having an opportunity to influence firsthand the horses that are in the ring and who's winning and that kind of thing. And through the decisions that they're making in breeding, and I think it's pretty cool. So
I don't know. I had an opportunity to go to Fossil Gate years ago. My sister was interviewing for one of their breeding internships, and she ended up going to work for Babcock Ranches instead. But just to like get to walk through their barn that day and like see all the studs and all those halter babies out in the pasture, like, God, those babies, I mean, yeah, I don't always understand the halter things, the halter look or whatever, but the difference in genetics between like a performance baby and a halter baby is quite incredible to see when they're that young. So that was really fun and cool to see.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. So, tell us how people can connect with On the Rail.
Well, we have a Facebook that we're really bad at posting on. We always say that we'll get better at doing that, but anyway, you can connect with us on Facebook, just On the Rail Podcast. Our website is ontherailpodcast.com. There's a contact form on there. Our email address is hello@ontherailpodcast.com. Or you can hit Jenna or I up on Facebook. Sometimes people don't know who is who. We're easily switched around sometimes. So either one of us is fine, or any of those options that I just said. I don't think I missed any. We don't have an Instagram. We do have a YouTube that I have poorly, I've uploaded, I don't know, 50 or some episodes. I still have 100 and some, or 50 plus to go still, but yeah.
It's still just audio. There's no video.
Yeah, just audio, YouTube.
Until this episode, ladies.
This one will have a video with it. But yeah, I always will say though that the Facebook Messenger for like pages sucks. Yes. So you're probably better off to message one of us personally. We eventually will see your message on Facebook if you send it to the On the Rail podcast page, but Facebook sucks on notifying you because they want you to pay for all this extra bougie stuff. So you're free to message us individually or email the hello@ontherailpodcast.com email address. And yeah, I was like, I think the internet thinks, because I have the amateur group, which Liz really isn't like, that isn't her thing, but everybody assumes between the podcast and that, and then the millennial cowgirl and all the stuff she's got going, or the Amateur Arena magazine website she was doing for a bit, like everybody assumes we're all just like one and the same. So whatever it is, we'll figure it out.
One of us will, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But thank you really for having us on today. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you for shedding some light on what we do, and just sharing information about podcasting, maybe for the person who is curious about it. So I appreciate both of you.
Keep doing what you're doing. It's great to see, and I'm really supportive of everything that you're doing for the halter industry. So awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Hey, if you're an amateur or a professional willing to share your story or bring content that helps us with our halter horses, you can email me at fitforhalter@gmail.com.